Let me show these suckers how to ball out here. Oh, man, let's get this together here. Oh, layup. Oh, shot. Oh, three. Oh, it's like Brick City out here. Mid-range. Oh, my goodness. I can't buy a bucket out here. I missed the whole damn basket. Oh, my goodness. What's going on, man? My game is looking trash. Oh, here we go. Black Power Media shirt. Now we cooking. Trees. I'm taking on 3 of y'all with these right here. Between the legs. Oh, my goodness. Behind the back. Layup. Oh, and did he just do a reverse? He is in beast mode out here. I ain't got to look. It's falling. Oh, my goodness. This guy is going 3, 2, 1. Kobe. Nice. Black Power Media, baby. Nice. Empower yourself. Go get you some of that Black Power Media again. Right here, blackpowermedia.org. Yeah.
I mix what I like. All right. What's up, world? Welcome back again. Black Power Media, Jared Ball. I mix what I like. Peace, everybody. Hope you're doing relatively well. Dhoruba Bin-Wahad is set to join us any minute. So please do like, share, subscribe, join, support us at Patreon. Link in the show description. And I understand there was some error with the link to the website, so I'm going to take care of that right now. And but it looks like Dhoruba is, wait, I thought I heard him. Nope. But so when Dhoruba gets here, we'll bring him up. But in the quick moment that we have, again, please do make sure you have the bell rung. You're putting this in your socials, doing all the things to make sure as many people as possible get a chance to see this. And yeah, I don't know why it's not working. But the short of it is, apparently Dhoruba saw the video I did today, this afternoon, and said I was engaging in abstract thought and that we don't need that now. I said I disagree, but that's largely irrelevant. And would he want to come on and tighten, check me and make the corrections? And it looks like he is here and able to do that now. So Dhoruba Bin-Wahad, welcome back to the platform. Always good to see and hear you. Welcome back. Are you hearing me? Are you able to hear? You good?
Yeah, I could hear you. Can you hear me?
Yep, loud and clear. So I just was quickly introducing and setting it up, and I said that you saw the video earlier and said that was I was engaged in abstract thought, and we don't need that right now. And I said I disagree, but that's irrelevant. And would you want to correct me on the platform? Let's make it work. And I appreciate you doing it. So I'll turn it over to you and let you start how you like and break it down, and then we'll go from there. Of course, we are gonna wrap no later than 7 o'clock because we got to make way for the special feature regarding Mumia coming up. So please, stick around and come back for that. Yeah, so we'll be up by then. But so that said, Dhoruba, please go ahead.
Well, I think you should lay out more about what you were saying. I think I never had a problem with your response as what do you call it, a silent academic critic or something like that. I forgot the term you used.
What'd I say? Oh, I don't know.
When you were talking about how you were a silent, you were invited to be a silent.
Right. So,
and I never really, from what I could gather from what you said, to sum it up, in a way, and you could correct me if I'm wrong, you were saying that basically, the oppressed don't require legitimization from the oppressor in order to resist, and I agree with that, and also, but what I was hearing, and you could clarify this, is that the whole dialogue, the whole back and forth, was about blackness and black and revolutionary nationalism, revolutionary blackness, and the distinctions, and you had Finkelstein, some leftist intellectual white boy, commenting on this, and but from what I could hear that you were saying, and you summed it up in one paragraph. In fact, you said I don't even have to go further. This paragraph basically sums it up. And so I just wanted you to repeat that, because what I was saying I didn't feel it contradicted that at all. What I was saying was the reason why I call the whole dialogue abstract is because it offered no analysis of of the white supremacist construct and empire where it's at right now, and how armed resistance and armed struggle and armed self-defense um, um, should be organized in order to be more effective in that paradigm, and what relationship does it have to mainstream politics, to the political mass struggle. And because the contradiction has always been in all revolutionary situations, the relationship between the armed front and the above ground and the so-called legitimate front. Everybody on the armed front is an outlaw. Everybody in the resistance movement who picks up arms against the state are outlaws. So going back and forth about whether it's legitimate or not, or whether it would cause more repression or not, seems to me to be, at this point in time, abstract dialogue, academic engagement. What we should be doing, and what I think, and what I said in the text, although I was rushing it, what I was saying in the text, what the role that should be played, should be talked about right now, is analyzing this white supremacist construct, where it is right now historically, and how armed struggle could be more effective in bringing about a political paradigm that would result in our being able to our people being able to liberate themselves, or at the very minimum exert a political consequence when we are violated, when our rights are violated, when our children are murdered. And so I'm from the old school. I believe that democracy cannot emerge unless there's a democratic distribution of the pain. And so what y'all were talking about to me was abstract.
Right on. So first of all, I want to start off by saying I greatly appreciate that you watched and that you reached out with the criticism. Now, but why I disagree is and maybe I'm wrong, but let me be clear. So initially, to your point, it was an academic. The video, that one in particular, was specifically referencing something that was academic, specifically me being asked as an academic to be a blind peer reviewer for an article that is set to be published, hopefully, in an academic peer-reviewed journal. So on that level, it was just academic. And in that regard, you're right. Some of the context is, in terms of the specific reference to Ibram Kendi and Norman Finkelstein, is that Finkelstein wrote this book criticizing these black academics. He and I had a disagreement here. His interviews with others, some of which I feel is a response to the one we did here in an attempt to clean up his argument, is carrying his justifiable critique of these liberal academics that is itself done for I think inappropriate reasons in an inappropriate way. That is, Finkelstein does not engage the radical tradition. He doesn't seem to understand Black intellectualism at all. So that was my problem with what he was doing, less that he was actually criticizing Kendi and others who we're all critical of here in these space anyway. So and in terms of the video I did this afternoon, you're right. It was not meant to go. It does not. I did not carry it far enough to go into a full-blown analysis of structures, white supremacy, colonization, mainstream politics, et cetera, as you say. My initial thinking is that part of what inhibits us developing, broadly speaking, that kind of analysis are the kinds of arguments that Ibram Kendi puts forth, the way that Norman Finkelstein puts arguments forth, not specifically that it's him, but it's that style of argumentation against the Black radical tradition and Black intellectualism that I think does become a problem. But and to the point about legitimating violence, that was a specific reference to the article more than anything else. I was just actually, in a way, thinking I was in small way and in passing doing what you were criticizing me for not doing. That is, when the article is talking about, just as you said, that not only does Black radicalism not require legitimacy or sanction to go carry out armed struggle, and nor should it. I was simply saying, and yet when they do that those actions are then turned around by the same people who would condemn it in the first place to say, well, that's why we have to repress you even more. I was saying that that's exactly what's being said today about Palestinians who are rebelling against the Israelis. So in that way, I thought I was kind of making a little connection beyond the abstract into to today's.
That's
actual
what I agreed with.
Okay,
That part
so that's it.
When you said that, you know, that's what I agreed with. But you see, Jared, you know, I've always maintained that brothers and sisters in academia like yourself, who are rooted in trying to bring forth a Black radical analysis and an understanding of capitalism and white supremacy and its role in the world. You know, I think that, you know, your contributions in your work is, you know, is indispensable. I think it's vital, because I think that your job is to produce revolutionaries. You know, that when these students come to you and they come into your class, they may not possess a good class analysis of themselves, of their structure, of society, but because of their exposure to you, because of your ability to influence how they think and how they look at the world, they may emerge after a couple of semesters with you dyed-in-the-wool revolutionaries, committed to struggle, committed to doing something other than, you know, get a bag for themselves personally. I know in my own particular circumstance, the reason why I've grown in terms of understanding and being wedded to historical materialism. My interest in history came from a teacher when I was in the 7th grade. That's what inspired me. And so I could understand the relationship between students and yourself. But having said that, my concern right now is that we're in the historical moment. And in this historical moment, the role of Black intellectuals and Black academics has to move to a whole different level. You know, you have the resources to research. I mean, look at your book, The Myth of Black Buying Power. I mean, that's something that, you know, if that Negro Mayweather could read, he should read. I mean, serious. He should read that. Okay. But of course he could hardly read. So, you know, that's a whole nother issue. But I'm just saying that so when you guys are going into all of this about the Black radical tradition, and you even have these academics talking about the role of the BLA as history. I mean, these are dudes that wouldn't bust a grape with a ball peen hammer. You know, none of these guys are prepared to deal with the consequences of the repressive national security state on those of us who take up struggles and take up the radical position that we should that we should retaliate, that we should exert a political consequence when violence is committed against our community. And so they sit back and they critique from the ivory towers of academia, talking about, well, this is adventuristic, and this is that, and this is that, you see. And you know, I've always found that disturbing, and because it's disingenuous, in my opinion, because rather than say, you know, well, the armed front is organized incorrectly in this particular capitalist white supremacist construct in order to do, if you are talking about political violence, if you are talking about curtailing the monopoly of violence of the state, that there are a number of things that should be done, that should be organized, that the mass line and the ideology of the underground or the black armed front should embrace this contradiction, should focus on this contradiction. That's what I'm talking about. That's what's needed. Okay, but nobody wants to have that discussion. That's why we have a congressional black caucus that I'm sure will issue a statement, you know, supporting Israel. But they had nothing to say at all when Palestinians are being murdered and being killed. They have nothing to say about AFRICOM in Africa and what's happening in Africa and the U.S. policies in Africa. They have nothing to say about that. But these bootlicking Negroes in the Congressional Black Caucus will come out and talk about how they abhor the violence of Hamas and the terrorism of Hamas and all that bullshit. So this is what I'm saying, that y'all discussions lend credence to people like that. Give them academic underpinning and support. They use your arguments in order to justify their reactionary positions. I mean, we had, what's this guy that used to former mayor of Newark? He's in Israel now. He was out jogging the other day when Hamas launched their attacks, and he was shocked that he had to be whisked into his 5-star hotel and secured. And you know, I mean, what is this nigga doing jogging in Tel Aviv? Huh? What is this? Where's the slap squad on this? To meet him at the airport. What I'm saying is that these Negroes that we talk about as our leaders, you understand, they suffer no consequence when they come to our community and running for office. There's nothing that they suffer, physical, politically, or otherwise. AIPAC has more, resonates more in our community, exercises more power over our black elected officials than we do. And whenever a black elected official is elected, the first thing AIPAC does and their cronies do is send them on a jaunt to Israel. You see, all paid for, brings his family and everything. You see, so what do we deal? How do we deal with AIPAC here? We don't. Y'all are having discussions about this, that, and the other, but none of you laid out how AIPAC is an unregistered agent of a foreign government, and what can we do about that, even on the legal level. We haven't brought no class action suits against AIPAC for the government to declare them an agent of a foreign government. That's an educational process. We don't expect to win the suit. The same thing with the police unions. The police unions exercise more political power and influence over black elected officials than black people do. Black elected officials are more afraid of the police unions than they are afraid of any Negro on the armed front. Trust me. Okay? So where's the class action suit against the police unions in the United States, brought by academics, legal experts, to show how police unions that the police are not workers, and that therefore their unions need to be decertified and recertified in order to conform to their role as armed agents of the state. Okay, these are all things that can be done and by intellectuals and lawyers, but none of y'all talk about any of that. You see, we go back and forth about the radical tradition and intersectional identity politics and all of that stuff. You see, which are totally irrelevant right now. Identity politics is bullshit right now, and you know it, and I know it. This is the fading of an empire, and they're desperate. This is why the United States sends a flotilla to the Mediterranean to support what? What are they there for? The Israeli IDF could destroy Gaza without U.S. help, and they're doing it right now as we speak. You see. So I'm just saying this is why I said that in many ways the discussions that y'all are having are abstract. They're not providing any type of organizational mass lines and positions that people who want to do something can do something. Everybody's not suited, of course, to wage armed struggle or armed self-defense. That's true. But there's a lot of lawyers out here who could bring a class action suit against AIPAC, who can bring a class action suit against the police unions. If the police unions, when we talk about Asada, they were a major force enforcing the Obama administration to take the position they did. That's how her return to the U.S. was even put in the documents calling for a shutdown or a cessation of the blockade. We got to understand that the role that needs to be played by Black academics is not discussing the end all and be alls of identity politics, but providing a strategic vision that activists could act upon, that they could put into organizational practice. And that's what I meant by abstract.
I appreciate all of that. But a couple of things, just to be clear. When you say you academics, part of what, and I admit defensiveness around that, because the article I was talking about and the work, what little there is I've done, all has been in support of the ideas and the politics that you're talking about of the BLA. We're not.
I'm not. When I say you academics, I'm not talking.
I know, but
I'm not talking about you in particular. I'm talking about that on a more generic.
I understand, but Dhoruba, but when you texted me to say that the conversation that I was having was abstract, without recognizing the distinction, and just you just lumped me in there. And the article that I'm talking about was literally. I know it's not doing everything. I'm not doing everything that you're saying needs to be done. I acknowledge that. But the article that I was talking about is trying to check those in academia and elsewhere who want to create these fake identity politic arguments and run amok with them. That's the point of the article. And I don't know who wrote it. I don't know who these people are. But I know for myself, it's hard to be anecdotal. There are those who are able to talk a good analysis in academia and do it in a way that doesn't destroy their career. Those of us who are not quite that talented and disciplined, our careers get jacked up. So I'm not saying, I don't even know how this is sounding, especially talking to you. I'm not trying to suggest sacrifice here that way. But what I'm saying is that we're not all the same. Is really what I'm saying, and that some of us in academia are not all the same. This article is not part of that crew. I don't consider myself part of that crew. So, and the reason I got amped about trying to talk about the article is because it is trying to do this work of saying, these other folks are being used to do what you're talking about, to create the analysis that the treacherous among us can. Oh, there goes the digital thumb. The treacherous among us can take and use to create policy with. So that's it. And the only other thing that I wanted to add is that I don't know who these lawyers would be or who these academics would be. But I would love to talk with you on or off air. Maybe we can get Bob Boyle involved and tell us, who should we reach out to in this legal world to start creating some of that. But beyond
maybe you should reach out to haven't won a case yet, Crump. Maybe you should reach out to that Negro, and see what he has to say. But I'm saying that we are I realize now there are no there's no significant cabal of people's lawyers like there were in the 60s, who took on cases of political activists, where the political activists are the ones that determine the nature of the litigation. It wasn't called, you didn't have the lawyers saying, well, we can't make that motion because of this, that, and the other. And whereas in the 60s, that was never an issue. We were the ones that called the shots in the courtroom. And it was up to the lawyers to try to educate the jury and bring our positions to challenge these indictments, to challenge the legal system. So I'm saying where those lawyers are at today, Allah knows best. I don't know where they at, but I know one thing, that they're not around. They're not around. And when you do try to talk to the few lawyers who claim to be people's lawyers, who claim to take on, they'll tell you how they're too busy fighting old Black Lives Matter cases, you see, and they don't know where they're going to get the money from and all of this stuff, you see. And so when you realize that that's the situation we're in, then you could understand how, there has been, I mean, when we look at something like the police after the George Floyd murder, and what was the slogan that came out? The major slogan that came out was defund the police. That's clearly a slogan that was put out by an encapsulated organization, an organization that understood that if you use a term like that in order to organize people, that you already has lost the struggle around that issue. Because then the police come out, when you say Black Lives Matter, the police comes out, Blue Lives Matter, dogs' lives matter, white folks' lives matter, all of these things. They couldn't co-opt that back in the 60s when we came out with Off the Pig. What were they going to say? What was their slogan going to be? When we came out with Power to the People, what was their slogan going to be? Power to the pigs? Power to the police? You see? So it tells you that the organizations and the level of political consciousness of these hashtag organizations was at such a low level that they were never in touch with the radical history and the radical traditions that you are trying to champion and get academia to look at. You see, and to analyze and to bring up to date. Every battle that we are fighting today, we've already fought and won. Every last one of them. But we don't have the memory. We don't have the connection between those battles that we won and the ones that we lost in order to take those struggles to a higher level. That's where I was talking. That's why I was talking about the BLA needs to be analyzed, and it needs to be analyzed whether the efficacy of violence is or should not be employed, and whether resistance breeds repression. Of course, resistance breeds repression. What do we think? This isn't a football game here. This is real life. So what I'm trying to say is that I understand that there's few academics like yourself, Jared. Trust me, I know that, and I didn't mean to imply that the front that you were trying to hold down was irrelevant. I didn't mean that. I didn't mean that, but I was just saying the fact that they pulled you into that discussion and that you felt that you had to really deal with it was in a lot of ways wasting your energy. Because you know what's going to happen with that. You're going to have, what's his name? What's the historian's name that's on TV all the time? What's his name? The one that's tracing black white folks' history and slavery and all of that.
Skip Gates, yeah.
Yeah, you're going to have these guys. They're going to be the ones that's going to write the books. They're going to be the ones that's going to be on TV and on CNN. They're going to be the ones that's decrying black violence and the equivalency of violence of the state and the violence of the oppressed. These are the ones that's going to win the day, not you. You're not going to be, if anything, they're going to try to ostracize you even more than they have already. You see? So what's the point? The point is that if you're going to get ostracized, you might as well get ostracized for something. You might as well get off. If you're going to get dealt with like this, then you have to make a clarion statement that would educate those who come behind you, that will definitely point to those who come behind you. That's one of the reasons that I found, I don't know if you read Ori's book, Tip of the Spear yet.
I'm getting through it. I'm not
I'm
finished,
getting
but I'm
through
getting
it.
there.
I'm trying to get through it too. But one of the things that he talked about in that book,
Yeah.
and I think this was the first time I read one like this. You know, it so well researched and documented. You know, that he didn't talk about he said Attica is. It ain't gone yet. It is. And what he was trying to do in this book, which I fully appreciate, he was trying to analyze from an academic point of view our politics and our position and tell our story about how we dealt with the enemy and how the enemy threw all of these things at us. And in every last one of their attempts to brainwash us, to neutralize us, they failed. You see? And so when you're able to tell the story, or you're able to attach your academic rigor to that type of history, from that perspective, from that other side of the barricade, of course you're going to be ostracized. Of course you're going to be demonized by mainstream academia. But what happens though is that there are those like myself, you know, who are educated and who are able now to break down things that I couldn't break down before, the way I needed to break it down, the subtleties and all of these things. And so that's why I told you when I said the Negroes on the street, they don't watch I mix what I like. And you say, oh man, whoa, that I know how that felt. But what I was trying to say is I do. And it's not your job, it's my job to make those connections. You see, that's what I was trying to say. We all got a role here.
But so speaking of roles, that's a really good point, because we have to be, I have to be clear. One, what Ori does in his book, first of all, he's doing a whole book. I was just doing today a video based on really just one article and really just one section of one article that I didn't write. Mm-hmm. So that's one distinction I think we need to start. But more importantly, in that vein, what I can't do what Ori has done. Mm-hmm. I'm not. I could try to make myself feel better and say it's age, it's my teaching load, it's whatever. But the reality is, even with all the time and resources in the world, I'm just not the intellect that he is. I'm not the disciplined scholar that Ori. So I can't perform that role.
But those who can,
I have to try to contribute.
But those who can, though, Jared, have to get around you. You see, that's what I'm saying.
I would argue that
they have to get around you, not me. They have to get around you. You see, they have to get around you. And like you said, you've had confrontations with them and discussions with them on air. And don't you know that those conversations and discussions revealed exactly who they were, exactly what their politics were? So your discussions, them trying to get around you and your critique, you know, they failed. They couldn't get around it. So you achieved what you thought you couldn't achieve just by confronting them on the level that you're confronting them on. You see, and I think that that's valuable to me it is. I think that that's valuable.
No, to me it is too. But I keep hearing you saying that putting it all together that earlier today that I wasn't doing anything effective and that Ori is. And I'm trying to say I can't do what he's doing.
That's not what I said.
That's
that's not
I think it is, Dhoruba. But my point is, and it's not even that I disagree so much. I'm just acknowledging I can't do what he does. I can't do it. I can't do it.
But I can't do what you do. I mean, so what?
Okay, so that's what I'm saying. I'm trying to play the role I'm playing.
That's okay. But
That's what I was
I'm good
thinking
with
too
that.
until you texted me earlier.
No. When I text you, I was saying that the whole dialogue, to me was abstract. And then you remember I said that I agreed with your position while you was trying to deal with these guys and what was being said, Finkelstein and all of them, and you were trying to deal with that. But I'm saying they can't get around you like they can get around me. You see, and that's, I mean, you're like you're like you're like you're like my security. You understand what I'm saying? See, they could brush me off and say, "Well, that Negro's crazy." You understand what I'm saying? He spent too much time in jail. He lost his mind. You understand what I'm saying? But you, Jared,
No, they get around me by saying he's just at Morgan State and hasn't published anything of value, and he hasn't
but
published on a university
that brings
press.
me back into play.
And
that brings me back talking about HBCUs and the Negroes there and class struggle and why we have to basically eliminate the Black Comprador class. The Black Comprador class has an intellectual component. They have intellectual and academicians who apologize for the Black Comprador class. So they're just as much our enemy, our class enemies, as anybody. I mean, how many like you talk about George Jackson and really go into George Jackson's politics? Not them knuckleheads on CNN. You see what I'm saying? So you elevate that struggle. So I apologize if you think that I just lumped you in with the with the rest of them knuckleheads. But it wasn't like that. I was just trying to say that what we really need now and where that discussion really needs to go is into an analysis of the white supremacist construct and empire right now at this historical moment, and where revolutionary violence would be more effective.
So now, let's take that. Well, what I was going to suggest is we take that point and again, as I've always said, any excuse to talk to you on here or anywhere is fine. So I don't really care if the critique was interpreted properly or not. This is the end result is all I'm after anyway. So I admit that. But let's take the point you're just making there in terms of what we need in terms of the kind of thought and approach and analysis. If we could just quickly connect it to the question of what's happening in Palestine and say, how should we be interpreting that? How should our approach to our identity here or wherever we are be used to connect or interpret what's happening there, and then what use should we be making of it intellectually or politically or whatever?
Well, I think the first thing that we need to understand is that we need a working definition of fascism in the national security state. That the United States has evolved into an entity that sounds like an oxymoron, but it is in fact quite unique. Democratic fascism. That's what we have here in the United States today. And this fascism is the same system of white supremacy that we have lived under since we've been here. I mean, the police state in America is nothing new to Black people. We've always lived under a police state, you see? And so how do we define that today? And how is it working? How has it evolved in the from the Cold War up until now? What has been the impact on all of that? We see how MLK, Dr. King, evolved in his politics to the point where he was just as anti-imperialist and anti-white supremacist as the Black Panther Party was. You see? And he arrived at those politics through struggle. Okay, he was rejected at a certain point during the so-called civil rights movement by the clergy, by the white clergy establishment that supported so-called quote, desegregation and equal opportunity. Look what the word equal opportunity means today. Look what it means today. Look how the white supremacist mainstream culture has co-opted white supremacy to mean that somehow white folks are being taken advantage of and they're oppressed. You see, this is all bullshit. And it's black academics, not you, it's black academics and black elected officials who have facilitated this with notions like good trouble. There's no such thing as all trouble is bad. That's why it's called trouble. You're going to put a new definition on it to mean that, oh, boss, I was just acting up, you know, because I just needed to cause a little trouble so you could look at me. So you could see, so you could have a little trouble. But I ain't really trying to cause you no trouble. You see? And so we have eulogies for these Negroes. I mean, when we talk about how many times, I mean, you could go on YouTube right now and watch nonstop the police murdering and violating us every day of the week. And are we going to, and they're supposed to be what? Civil servants? Huh? Who are they? These are armed agents of the state, the same way the military are armed agents or armed forces of the state. They're not workers. So why do they have a union? Only working people have unions. They're not workers.
Mm-hmm.
You know, look at the boycott, divestment, and the BDS movement. You have corporations that have outlawed or have boycotted anybody that has that signs on to the BDS boycott of Israel. I mean, they have actually went out and made the BDS activity illegal. Okay, what have we done in return? Have we made AIPAC illegal? Have we forced AIPAC? Now, this is something that's in the lead. This is not your particular area. I understand that. But what are these law firms and these so-called law communes and anti-poverty centers, what are they doing? What battles are they fighting here? Huh? These are institutions that are at the forefront of the domestic colonial project. Okay? We know the role that Zionism and white supremacy has played in the world. Not just in the United States, in the world. Huh? And so if we are talking about anything, the connection between Zionism and white supremacy in America directly affects Black people. When the Black Panther Party was at its height, it was the JDL, the Jewish Defense League, that they used to put up against us in New York. We've had physical confrontations with them. And who was the major one of the major leaders of the JDL in New York? Benjamin Netanyahu. Okay. So we need to understand that the connection between, I mean, look at the streets of New York right now. Thousands and thousands of people in the streets supporting this white supremacist settler state, Israel, in the streets. You have a Black mayor, a nigga that used to be a cop. You understand? And in fact, he formed the police union because the mainstream police union was discriminating against Black officers in the police department. So he formed the Black police union.
Did you see that? Did you see the statement from Amari Stoudemire, the former Nick?
Yeah.
And Black man turned Jew?
Yeah.
Did you see what he said today?
These Negroes, I mean, look at Mayweather. Look at Mayweather sent a plane to Israel with relief aid. Like Israel needs relief.
Wow.
They're getting billion. This is Mayweather.
Wow.
You see what I'm saying? Talk about I stand with Israel. The nigga can't even read. So who wrote that statement for him? You see? So this is what we're confronted with. We are confronted with a Comprador class that needs to be put in their place. They need to be put in their place, if not by electoral means, by any means necessary. This Comprador class is ridiculous. So you have black apologists for white supremacy in Israel. And then they talk about Voting Rights Act and equal opportunity for black people in the United States. You see? And nobody sees this contradiction. You remember what Jesse Jackson went through when he was running for president and he called New York Town. He ain't lived that shit down yet.
He's never gonna live it.
They
and
took
I
it
do.
They
and
took
I'm
him
sorry.
to the Jelly Roll. He called New York Town. They took that Negro to the Jelly Roll.
This is one of the few moments where I do wish people who are younger than well, certainly me in this case, could feel that moment. Because it was crazy. I mean, it was Saturday Night Live skits. It was everywhere. And that man, he's never gonna live it down. He's never gonna live it down. They're gonna put it. It's gonna be in his obituary.
Yeah.
It's gonna be the last line on his grave. On his gravestone.
When you go read something like Target Blue about the police war against the Black Liberation Army, when they said when the chief of detectives Seidman, a Zionist, the chief of detectives of New York City, when he got the news the police was shot, where was he? Was he in Long Island in his home? He was in Tel Aviv on vacation. That's where he was. He had to rush home to deal with this. The NYPD has an office in Tel Aviv. The NYPD, a Metropolitan Police, have an office in Tel Aviv. If you're not telling me that there's a connection between the white supremacist settler state of Israel and the United States Democratic Fascist government, then you're insane. And this affects us every day. We're talking about cop cities popping up. Who's training these people in Cop City? Who are they working with? Where are they getting their expertise and operational guidelines from? They're getting them from the Mossad. They're getting them from Shin Bet. They're getting them from the Israelis. Huh? So if we don't understand how it is that AIPAC, a so-called a civilian agency whose stated aim is to support Israel. They write most of the U.S. State Department memorandums on Israel. They damn near taking it verbatim from AIPAC. You can't, if you have one black elected official that stood up and said anything about the state of Israel, he couldn't get elected dog catcher in New York. Okay? But he could say anything he wants about black folks and black organizations and be applauded. Okay? If the BDS movement, if you've had over the past 15 or 20 years, you've had a number of support organizations that supported educational and healthcare institutions in the West Bank and in Gaza. And once the U.S. declared Hamas a terrorist organization, many of these organizations were criminalized, some of their leaders put in jail, and they were disbanded. But we haven't done that to AIPAC. We haven't done that to the AIPAC. AIPAC is an undeclared agent of a foreign government, and that's against the law. So where's the lawyers that's supposed to bring these suits at? Where they at? None of them are around. They can't come up with that idea. I had to think of it. Same thing with the police unions. When that $1 million bounty was put on Assata during the Obama administration, it was the police unions that came out.
They upped it to 2.
Yeah, well, I'm just saying it was the police unions. It was the police unions that put pressure on the Obama administration to include her return to the U.S. as prerequisite to any type of normalization between the United States and Cuba. And to Cuba's credit, they said, man, we ain't even playing that. We don't even want to hear that. You know, she ain't on the table. Okay? So if the police unions could influence foreign policy like that, and black folks can't, we got a congressional black caucus. They can't influence a foreign policy in Africa. They have absolutely no influence. They talk all that smack. They have absolutely no influence unless they're inviting African leaders to a dinner. I mean, they give slick dinners and award ceremonies. But them Negroes need to sit their tired ass down. We need to sit them down. And the reason why we don't sit them down is because they enjoy all of the comforts of the same Comprador class over here that's enjoyed by the Comprador class in Africa. So the major objective right now for African people on the continent and for us in the diaspora is to sit our Comprador class down, is to destroy our Comprador class. We can't do nothing as long as they are standing between us and our oppressor. We can't move with until they renounce or turn on their own class interests. You see, and so when we talk about these things, when academia talks about this, we need to talk about what is the influence of the Congressional Black Caucus on U.S. foreign policy. You know, I mean, you got an idiot like this woman Green. What's her name?
Linda
Marjorie. What's her name?
No, Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Yeah, Marjorie did this buffoon. You know, you got this buffoon up here calling shots in the Congress. You understand? Calling shots in the Congress, man. And another one, Boebert, a former, escort, calling. I mean, this is the type of people that we have on the right.
With sex workers, though, that's not the problem. Her career is taking a downward turn. If anything.
Yeah, well, of course. I mean, sex workers will have a legitimate. That's a legitimate industry. You know, her shit. White supremacist feminism is a whole nother ball game.
That's the illegitimate career.
That's right. And so what I'm saying is, you ain't had one of them sisters that bitch slapped her up on Congress. All they talking all that crap, Maxine Waters and all of them. People talk about her like a dog. I ain't see, man, she needs to take her old ass and call one of them young white girls and they say, listen, let me tell you something. I don't know where you come from, but I will bitch slap you. Now she could talk all that shit when it comes to us, but when it comes to these crackers, they all got on they on some protocol shit. You see? What I'm saying is we need to get busy. And the only way we need to get and one of the ways we need to get busy is we have to first step to our Comprador class. We have to step to them. And we have to step to those agencies and those formations that have more influence over Black elected officials than we do. I mean, this is ridiculous. Where you could have somebody like this Negro mayor in New York. I mean, you got Ukrainian refugees in New York that got more juice than the homeless people that's been sleeping on the sidewalk for the past 15 years. These refugees get put up in 5-star hotels. You see, that you can't go nowhere near. Nobody, you ain't supposed to know who's in the hotel. You see, you got a cracker from Florida sending migrants to New York. Nobody even questions why are the migrants fleeing their country. They're fleeing their country because of U.S. foreign policies and U.S. exploitation in their country. It's the U.S. foreign policy in South America that has caused this refugee crisis. It's not bad government or authoritarian governments or military regimes, because the United States government has been in bed with these authoritarian governments and military regimes in order to control their population and exploit their resources. There's priority given to Venezuelan refugees. Why? Because the U.S. has sanctions on Venezuela. You see? So millions are fleeing Venezuela, and then they're talking about they're fleeing Venezuela because of the poor state of its economy.
Yeah, just like Israelis are fleeing Israel because of the poor state of its current, the current poor state of its economy.
You got to remember, it's Iran that told Hamas that they should attack Israel. They gave them the go ahead. You see, all right, y'all need to make a move. You understand? It was Iran.
It was a hell of a move.
If you go for this, you go for fried ice cream. I mean, this is what's happening. And this gets mimicked and repeated over and over and over again till this is how we see the real world. You see? This is how we see stuff. So when you are trying to hold a line against academicians who are fudging the issues, who are trying to befuddle us on a certain level, confuse us, when you're trying to hold that line, you out there by yourself. You out there by yourself. There's nobody got your back. Who got your back? You see, nobody. The institution doesn't have your back. The black, they ain't got your back. Black elected officials don't have your back. They're trying to get an all-paid jaunt to Israel, with the family. You see,
they want to go jogging too, Dhoruba.
Yeah, I'm too
be
old.
Out there running. They want to be taking. Who you say was jogging? Who was that, by the way? Was that?
That was the former mayor of Newark. What's his name? That young boy.
Booker.
Cory
Cory Booker.
God. And then,
but I did see.
And then you have Meeks. You understand? Meeks gets in Congress and puts up a bill. I think it was 6 months ago or whatever.
Where's Big Pun? The Meeks cannot inherit the earth.
But Meeks gets up there.
This Meeks cannot inherit the earth.
But Meeks puts up a bill talking about if African governments and Africans don't support the U.S. Ukraine war, that they need to be sanctioned. But this dude goes home to Brooklyn and nobody slaps this nigga. You see, this is what I'm saying. Nobody punk slaps him. People should be saying, "Are you Meeks?" Yeah, I'm Meeks. And run that nigga home.
Hey, well, check this out, because first of all, real quick, shout out to Ray Johnson. Appreciate the super chat. And not to shame you, but Noble Brown has come in heavy, and Dhoruba, maybe you two can work this out, because he says he would love to have a meal with you. I'm not sure how to address Mr. Bin-Wahad. I'm making my way there soon, and I hope there's a way to have further communications and a few meals behind the curtain. And thanks to Dr. Ball and BPM for everything, all the things and shows. Well, thank you, Noble Brown. So I didn't get invited to the dinner, though.
Yeah, but you got the donation. I'm broke.
Well, I think he's going to take you to dinner. I think you're going to get a nice meal, and maybe the two of you could walk around Brooklyn.
I'd rather take the donation than the dinner. You don't have to take me to dinner to rap. We could talk without dinner. No, seriously. I appreciate that. I would love to have conversations with brothers like that. I understand, that we really have to deal with our Comprador class. This is the most. We have more black faces in high places than we ever had in our history. And every time a black man gets shot, a black pregnant woman gets murdered by the police, it's a black police chief that comes out and talks about how we're going to look into this. It's a black mayor who talks about they're not going to tolerate this and they're not going to tolerate that. Okay, it's a black prosecutor that says there's no case here. You see? So all of these black faces in high places, you know, that all that we have today, they're the descendants, and many of them are have direct lineage to the Negroes that came out of the war on poverty, the poverty pimps that turned politicians from the 60s. LBJ knew what he was doing when he talked about the Great Society and the war on poverty. He said that black folks was burning up towns and cities because they had no investment in it. They didn't have anything, to lose. So what did he do? He created the Comprador class that we're dealing with now.
Do
That's
you
where they came
know?
from.
So a couple years ago at the anniversary of the Kerner Commission report, I was doing a little bit of work about it, and I read about how he had called for he commissioned the report, Johnson, and then when he got the report, he was furious with it. And one of the reasons is because the report told him, I think now looking back, that what he was really upset about was that the report was putting in print what he knew to be true, and that is what you just said. Because the report actually says at one point, if you just keep doing these poverty programs and all these other little things, it's going to create false leadership, and it's going to create more I think it said potential for rebellion, because the point was these programs don't work. So it was, even the Kerner Commission was saying it said we need structural federal national investment if you want to change employment and poverty and all that kind of stuff. And they were like, and Johnson was like, nah.
Look at what happened simultaneously. The Law Enforcement Assistant Program. That was the beginning of the militarization of police. That was the beginning of transferring military equipment to the police and military training to the police. Look what else came out of that. Before then, there was no such thing. Black folks wasn't talking about black on black crime. Black on black crime came out with black capitalism. Oh, we got to stop talking about the police killing black folks. We're doing it to ourselves. You see? And so now we still have that. That's the antecedent of defund the police. In the police state, in a national security state, they're not going to defund their armed agents. That's a given. So to even call for it means that you're not really serious about this. And you try to fudge it over with some type of bullshit reform that we need to take more money from the police and put it into social services and healthcare programs. So if you got a police department like New York that spends $3 billion a year or $2 billion a year, and you take $500 million and you give it to social services, they still got $2.5 billion. They're not defunded at all. And then the people that you're going to recruit for these social programs to go out with them, they're going to get brainwashed into the police psychology and the police mentality. And before you know it, they'll be standing right there when the police say, okay, stand back, we'll take over now. Just like EMI does, emergency services do. When they roll up on the scene, they're under the control and the command of the police on the scene. Why? How? You see? So when we talk about the police, we have to understand that they have qualified immunity. They have their own extra constitutional rights. They have all of these rights that ordinary workers don't have. They're not workers. So why do they have a union? Why? How come nobody's ever challenged the union? Nobody's ever said nothing about police unions. And the police unions take all of the money. They get investment. Look at Cop City. And all the corporate money and funds that went to the police unions in order to deal with Cop City and establish Cop City. They invest their money in corporations, in companies, in armaments industries. They invest their money in these very institutions that suppress, discriminate, and murder black people and people abroad, are the police unions. There's no worker in America that has the power of life and death in their hands, that they could kill you based on, I thought he was a threat. The nigga was too big, I was scared. You see? So why are police unions allowed to function the way they are? Because we have a Comprador class that don't want to challenge police power, can't challenge police power in America, because America is a police state. It's men with guns that control the United States. They're committed to protect capitalist property and serve the corporate elite and the rich. That's who they serve. They ain't serving us. So I'm saying all of this to say that there's struggles that we can wage, that we don't wage because we are misled by not only a comprador class, but by an educational system that tells us there's nothing that we can do, there's nothing that we can do, that reform is the only way to go about doing this. We have no abolitionist movement. There is no abolitionist movement in America, just like there's no left. There's no real left in America anymore. You see? So all of these things I'm saying are a consequence of an educational system that has programmed the masses of people into the values and standards of the most powerful classes in American society. And we can't think outside that box. The only way we get outside of that box is when the guns are drawn. That's when shit get real, when the guns are drawn. You see? That's why, who are the foremost advocates of gun control? Black folks. we got programs in the Black community, turn your gun in, no questions asked. Meanwhile, white folks is buying the guns that you just turned in. White supremacists and racists and MAGA folks is buying the guns. I mean, they take it, they putting out Christmas cards with the whole family holding on to AK-47s and M16s.
Oh, I mean, I've even seen a few of the video postcards they send to each other that they take these huge sweeping shots across their patios that are just wall to wall guns. It's just they just lay everything out, and they got they probably do. They take all the guns out there in that program and drive them straight out to Kentucky.
We could look at all these different facets of law enforcement. You take stop and frisk, racial profiling, stop and frisk. One of the purposes of stop and frisk is to give young black men especially a criminal record so they can't own firearms legally. That's the purpose. Once you get stopped, you get frisked, you get caught with a little bit of weed on you, you get run through the system, you no longer qualify for a pistol carry permit. You out the box. You see? So stop and frisk has been very effective, but people don't see that that's one of the reasons that it works. Racial profiling, that's one of the reasons for that. You see? It's terrorism. It's to terrorize our community. You see? And it's to, I mean, you got black people that say, well, if we don't call 911, who else we gonna call? Call Ghostbusters. You don't call nobody else, call Ghostbusters. If you call 911, you need to ask, why don't we have community control of public safety? Why? Why don't we? It's because the black comprador class has blocked it. It's because the police unions have blocked it. We don't have community control of public safety. We don't have residency clauses for police in the poor communities. We don't. They do 2 and 3 years probation on when you become a police officer, and you're assigned to certain communities. There should be housing and schooling provided for these police so that they could police the communities that they come from. They have to live in the communities that they police, at least on their probationary period. Why don't we have community control of public safety? Why? Because the unions made sure that the only thing that comes up is civilian complaint review boards. Toothless civilian complaint review boards, where the mayor has 2 members, the police union has 2 members, and the community got 3. You see? Nothing ever comes of these civilian complaint review boards. We need community control of public safety, not defunding the police. We need community control of public safety and community policing, residency clauses for police who are assigned to our community. I remember when Amiri Baraka took office in Newark years ago, his first term. One of the first things he tried to do was implement something akin to this. And the police union went bananas. They said that You can't have residency clauses for police in Newark. Them people in the ghetto hate us. Huh? You goddamn right they hate your ass. You're an occupying force. You're not there to protect us. You're there to terrorize and control us. You see? And so I'm saying all of this to say that when you try to wage struggle in academia on your level against these people who are who are trying to confuse identity politics with revolutionary struggle, who are talking about the efficacy of reforms and black capitalism and all of this stuff. When you are struggling with these folks without a mass movement, your struggle then becomes almost fruitless. We need a mass movement. We need an alternative political paradigm of power in the United States. And when we realize the forces that have prevented that, it has been the black bourgeoisie. It has been the black Comprador class. It has been the Jesse Jackson types. It has been the Leonard Jeffries nephews type. What's that Negro's name? Hakeem Jeffries. Nigga got a name like Hakeem. Ain't this it's been these Negroes. You see? They're the ones that have no interest in the independent black working class political party. It was Jesse who co-opted the Rainbow Coalition. He took it and ran with it and made it his struggle to get black folks on corporate boards of directors. You see, so now we got a a defense secretary who used to sit on Raytheon. You see, so I'm telling you, integration works. So black faces in high places. This ain't just about melanin. This ain't a melanin struggle here. It's not about the complexion and the color of your skin. You see, because you have black enemies of black people. And that's clear, So all I'm simply saying when I said to you that struggle that you were waging was abstract, I didn't mean to imply that the position that you were trying to bring out and emphasize, which I agree with, was abstract. What I meant to say was that academia should be having this discussion, analyzing the national security state, analyzing the vulnerabilities of the national security state, how domestic colonization really works, how the U.S. Defense Department utilizes war in order to maintain hegemonic power at home and abroad. Okay. Now, once you start breaking this down, then anyone who's committed to armed resistance or self-defense now knows who the targets should be. Now know how they should organize themselves to avoid surveillance, to avoid certain things. How there should be a relationship between the above ground political struggles of our activists and the underground political struggles of our soldiers. There's a connection to the two. And we have to know how to deal with that. This is something that we've wrestled with since we came out of slavery. You see? And to have a discussion that talks around that, to me, is abstract.
Right on. No argument here.
I done ran off at the mouth too much.
No, not at all. I just don't have. I mean, I don't have an argument, and I think I clarified what I was attempting to do and what I think I'm doing in my own mind. But I'm happy to be checked and to hear the criticism, and to rap with you.
But y'all got to. But what I'm trying to say is, when you get on these panels with Skip Gates, man, you got to slap this dude, man. You got to reach all the way across the table and say, "What did you say?"
That's why I'm not invited anywhere near wherever he is. That might be it right there. Him and a couple other ones.
You'd be like Sharpton and what's the name? Be farting and wrestling on.
When Roy Ennis and
And Fat Al. Oh, he ain't
Yeah.
fat no more. Bobblehead.
No, he's incredibly thin and frail looking, but
Yeah.
more power to him. Well, we have a couple minutes. If you got a couple minutes and folks want to raise any questions or comments in the chat, I can't pull them up because our StreamYard is not working properly, but I can read them from another screen if folks have something they want to bring. Otherwise, Dhoruba, it's always a pleasure, and I'm not gonna front. I relish the fact that I'm able to receive a text from you and to get hemmed up a little bit. So I appreciate it, and it's always a pleasure to get you to come back on here. And any excuse is
Well,
a good one. Any reason is a good one.
I've always expressed my gratitude to you and the Black Power Media and the crew that you got over there, because you guys, y'all try to bring fire to the issue, and the good thing about it, whether it's you, Kalanji, or Kamal, y'all are clear and you don't back down. You see, and that's what's needed. I mean, there's a few podcasts on here right now on YouTube, and I'm kind of I kind of like tune into some of them, and there's some of them on there that are very, very enlightening and very eye opening, and they don't back down. But then again, we have this misleadership class, and we have these internet gangsters and these internet intellectuals who get on, and they talk all this smack and confuse the issues. But I mean, you can't control that. This is a medium. The medium is the message, and so, but I do give up, well, this because I have folks watching your programs from Austria, Italy, and Germany, and they tuned in. Sometimes they comment, but you're very educational, especially for people abroad, especially for those who are these young Pan-African students and activists in France and in Austria, and they learn a lot from your program. So I wouldn't be the one to say that you shouldn't wage the type of struggle that you're waging in academia and bringing out those points. It's very important, and it not only enlightens myself, that when I do travel and I speak on these matters, I have references. You see, I could reference things. It's like the other day I was on, because you invited me with Ajamu. And BAP, I mean, I'm able to recommend to organizations in West Africa and socialist movements in Africa that y'all need to read this memorandum, that y'all need to become an affiliate of BAP, and to me that's gratifying, because, well, who else could I point them to? You see what I'm saying? And I know that you and brothers like Kamal and Kalanji, I know y'all take that seriously, and it's important. Like Ajamu said, solidarity is a two-way street. This is not just about rhetoric here. And we could see this now in how the struggle is escalating in Israel. And how, how even, like you pointed out, how even the so-called left liberals that you thought that were even talking that two-state solution are now talking about the terrorism of Hamas and the equivalency of humanity that they never recognized before. They never recognized Palestinian humanity when the Israelis are killing and murdering people and telling folks, yeah, we ain't gonna send nobody to the International Tribunal or the International Court of Criminal Justice. Ain't no Israeli soldier going there. You see? So now when you capture these Israeli soldiers, you understand, and you lay their monkey asses out in the street, now you're a terrorist. You see? when they're tearing down Palestinian homes and arresting their kids and murdering them in the streets, everybody's talking about there needs to be a dialogue. You see, there needs to be a dialogue. And so we'll see what's going to happen and how it plays itself out. But I assure you that what goes around comes around. And when the Ashkenazi Jews were wiped out by the Nazis in the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising, you see, they were wiped out by the Nazis. They leveled the Warsaw Ghetto and shipped everybody to concentration camps. So what are the Ashkenazi Jews, European settlers doing in Palestine now? They intend to level Gaza and relegate their people to concentration camps. You see, these fascist dogs, and everybody sitting up here crying crocodile tears about how my son is been taken captive in Tel Aviv. What was he doing there in the first place? He was probably in IDF. He probably had dual citizenship. And then when you go into dual citizenship, you know, Jewish families are paid a considerable amount of money to resettle in Palestine. They're given a head start in terms of family money to relocate to Israel. So U.S. policy towards the European settler state of Israel is concrete. This is something that's real. And at the same time, they could get dual citizenship to Israel. Let an African try to get dual citizenship in Africa, in the United States. They can't even get a visa. You know how hard it is for an African on an African passport to get a visa to the United States? I mean, it's incredibly difficult. If they don't have money in the bank, if they are not a professional, if they don't, you know, I mean, what they go through just to qualify for a visiting visa pales in comparison to how easy it is for a white Jew in America to get dual citizenship in Israel and actually join the Israeli military, a U.S. citizen in the Israeli military. So when his monkey ass gets killed in the struggle over there, they're going to cry crocodile tears about how they got Americans hostage, how they got Americans being killed by these animals that are terrorists. You see, I remember, just to give you a vignette, when Ocean Hill Brownsville struggle was going on, and the JDL was active in supporting the United Federation of Teachers, which was 80% white and almost 90% Jewish. You see, when they were active in that, there was a young kid from what is it, Williamsburg, I think. A young kid hit a black kid and killed him. It was a hit and run. He fled into Williamsburg. He was chased by a mob of black folks who were held back by the police from entering into the Jewish community. This kid wound up. He didn't go to court. He didn't go on trial. He fled to Israel, and that's where he stayed. There was no compensation to the child, to the black child that was murdered. There was no justice brought. He fled to Israel.
Shoot, my wife went to, I think, middle school with a kid who killed, I forgot where they're from, but somebody, some brown-skinned person, and fled to Israel.
Yeah.
Never stood trial, never, you know, but now it turns out that, you know, if I remember correctly, karma caught up with him. It didn't go well for him over there either. But
it probably didn't go well for that creep that fled to Israel back in the day. Probably didn't go well for him neither.
But it definitely didn't go well for the kid he killed. So, you know, but to your point,
I mean, you when you look at the Ukraine war, this proxy war in the Ukraine, you know, you have people, you have black civilians that volunteer to fight in Ukraine, and they get passports. They could travel to Ukraine. They could join the Ukrainian military. They even got an American brigade over there or something, or volunteers. Talk about international volunteers. And Back in the day, you couldn't go fight for Frelimo. You couldn't get a passport to go to Mozambique to fight for Frelimo. You couldn't fight for the MPLA. You couldn't fight for none of the liberation. I mean, if you did, you was a criminal. And your passport was rejected, and you would be subjected to prosecution. You see? So when the shoe is on the other foot, you'll find out how tight those shoes are. And this is going to happen. You know, this is going to happen. They're bragging about how the Israeli, the IDF have launched their greatest, the most intense bombardment of the Gaza than in history. And the Gaza is an open air prison. And they're talking about killing civilians? Huh? I mean, who else is in the Gaza but civilians? You see? So this dual standard, and these idiots that come out like Mayweather talking about, you know, I mean, this is sad. I mean, this is really, really sad how easily Black folks are manipulated and duped into mouthing platitudes for white supremacy in a European settler state. You know, I mean, it's worse than back in the day when Black performers were performing in South Africa, talking about they were performing to an integrated stadium. You see, so it was okay. Yeah, I think he even had Shaka Khan on one of them going to Israel to perform. You know, at the same time. Yeah, I mean, and then they talk about how Shaka Khan was in the Black Panther Party. Well, she sold newspapers. You know, she was a community worker. Apparently, the politics and the political education didn't sink too deep.
It didn't stick.
No, it didn't stick at all. You know.
So well, listen, Dhoruba, I think we need to start wrapping up here, unfortunately. But I did see that Renee has offered a standing invitation to you to come join us on Saturday, any Saturday, from 11 to 1. If you got time, you're welcome, including this week, I'm sure. But any other time that, you know, you feel the need to reach out, definitely holler. It's always a pleasure. And but any last thoughts before we wrap for the night?
No, I mean, you know, I went on my rant, but
no, we love it. We appreciate
but
it.
I just think that those two, one of these, that we need strategies and tactics of resistance, you know, inside and outside of the paradigm of the status quo's legality. And there are a lot of opportunities to challenge the police state legally. And I only mentioned two, you know, well, actually three. Real community control of law enforcement in the colonial enclaves that we call the hood, challenging the status of Zionist organizations that use and influence our leaders to take reactionary positions that direct funds and money away from our communities' projects because they consider them anti-Semitic, like AIPAC. And also challenging the efficacy and the legitimacy of armed agents of the state having unions similar to those of working class people. These unions need to be decertified and recertified according to their actual role in society. And so that's what I would use your platform for, to put out that call for those types of actions that we can get behind, that we can mobilize behind, that we know that we may not win those legal battles, but there will be sublime educational tools for people to understand the real dynamics of power and white supremacy in the United States.
As usual, appreciate you. Dhoruba Bin-Wahad, thank you very much once again for joining us here. Thanks to everybody who came through this evening. Please like, share, subscribe, put it in the socials, do all of those things. we'll always look to catch up with you again. See you in that whirlwind. We know you're willing to fight for it, so peace to you as always. As Fred Hampton used to say, and we'll catch you all next time here at I Mix What I Like It throughout the BPM platform. Make sure you have the bell rung so you don't miss anything. And thanks again, Dhoruba. It's always a pleasure. Appreciate you.
All right. Thank you. Thanks, Jerry.
Take good care, everybody. Peace.
I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like. What I like, what I like.